Hello, and thank you so much for tuning into my podcast. My name is Kara, and I'm a holistic health practitioner for both people and pets. After working for years in the conventional medicine field, I realized that while our lifespans may be getting longer, our health spans are rapidly shrinking. And when it comes to our pets, both their length and quality of life are decreasing. When I turned to functional medicine and a more holistic approach to health, I saw dramatic improvements for my pets, myself, and my patients. Join me each week as I merge natural health for people and pets by focusing on the root cause of disease and applying raw, real remedies that you can use to improve overall wellness for every member of your family, including the furry ones. Hi everyone, welcome back. Today I'm joined by two really exciting guests. We have Dakota Glick. He is an agroecologist and regenerative agriculture practitioner focused on restoring ecosystem health and the water cycle. Dakota believes that through proper land management, we can reverse the worst effects of climate disruption and productively sequester atmospheric carbon dioxide while restoring the vitality of natural world and rural communities. We also have Melissa Makis, who entered the agricultural world by way of community gardening, urban community gardening. Her interest in local foodways and food justice inform all of her work, from marketing CSA programs to facilitating educational classes to raising grass-fed beef. Her love of animals brought her to ranching as she saw how livestock were a critical tool to restore grasslands and reverse desertification. She believes that agroecological farming is crucial for healthy hydrology, climate, and communities. Welcome you two, and thank you for being here.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. We're very excited.
And I'm really excited too. I've really been looking forward to this episode because to give a little explanation for people. So I was able to meet Dakota. Melissa, unfortunately, I did not meet you in person, but I got to go out to a local farm and meet Dakota's really cool cows. And I have a couple of pictures, but it was like the best day. And it's the first time that I have ever actually seen cows grazing, or I guess living is the word, in anywhere that is not just a flat field or, I've driven by many, unfortunately, feedlots, off throughways, and even in the country. And then, of course, I've driven by like pastured and grass-fed areas, but these cows were like on hills and there were all kinds of trees and it was just a completely natural environment. And it was magical for me. I really loved it. So I love what you guys are doing.
Yeah, it was a fun day. I'm glad I could have you out to the ranch.
You poor thing. You had to tromp all around with me.
Oh no, I love hearing my work with other folks. Absolutely, no. It's one of the big benefits of my my job is I get to share that with people like you.
I love it. I love it. So tell us a little bit about what you guys are doing and how did you get here? Because I think this is a bit of a niche sector and most people don't end up here. So we definitely want to hear about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're both ranchers. It's our official job title, and and we're both working with cattle and goats now on the two ranches we're on. My ranch is like a research and demonstration place, and we try to show the benefits of regenerative agriculture, for the consumer, but also for the producer, and like the benefits it can have in folks' operations. And then, we take that research and the kind of living laboratory that we are, and we do a little bit of advocacy, to the public and to lawmakers and stuff.
Yeah, I also work with cattle and goats on a ranch here, and I'm really there to help improve and kind of solidify the regenerative practices that they've been working on improving over the last couple of years since they started. So I'm there working with the cattle and the goats and also implementing a science and monitoring program for the ranch as well to, be able to track what their practices, what the effects their practices are having on the land there. And I think, our journey to this place, we kind of have a similar journey. I came to, like you said, I came to agriculture through community gardening in college, actually. And I was just amazed that we could grow our own food. As an urban kid that, grew up in Los Angeles, I really was so disconnected from that. And it was just so awe-inspiring to harvest my first vegetable. And it kind of evolved from there. And I eventually ended up studying holistic management and really getting excited about how the potential livestock had to restore ecosystems, particularly desertified ones or dry ecosystems. And there was this kind of world that had been around for a few decades at that point, this holistic management world, they call it. And I kind of dove into that. And over the last few years, the term regenerative has gained a lot more traction, and it's kind of a more all-encompassing term. But it's all kind of, we're all going for the same goal here. So that's kind of how I got into this world.
Yeah, I'm also a LA kid, so we've both fully kind of made the urban to rural transition.
Yeah.
But after high school, I lived in China for 2 years, and it was the first time I'd lived rurally, and I kind of didn't know where I saw myself, as an adult and in the economy. And I kind of figured that the idea of feeding people is something I could do with my life. And so when I came back, I went to school, and I ended up studying agricultural ecology, and mostly working lands. So that's like farming, fisheries, forestry, and then rangelands where folks raise livestock. And I was in school during the big California drought, and so I fell in love with, drylands and the challenge of restoring drylands with animals, and that's kind of how I got
Lord
it.
knows we have a lot of that around here.
Absolutely, yeah, and worldwide, it's a problem.
Yeah. That's such a cool journey. That's exciting that you lived in China for a little while. I've heard of a few people who are mostly in the human functional medicine world who lived or studied in China for several years, and it really inspired them to kind of lean more heavily into traditional Chinese medicine and herbs and different practices. And I think that being able to go to different cultures and experience how they kind of view through their lens and even their own challenges really helps you grow and like have more perspective. So I really love that for you. That's super cool. And I am in the same boat. I grew up in Buffalo, New York, which is still a big city. It's not quite Long Island, but we just had a little cookie cutter backyard. You didn't see community gardens or, we had a flower garden in the back, but we certainly didn't grow any plants. They don't teach you how to do that in school. I don't think they even teach kids to sew in school anymore.
Yes.
And so, yeah, that's it's not something that I grew up wanting to do either until I got into kind of young adulthood and had friends who had tomato plants, and you just start small. And I kill a lot of plants, but my husband is the plant dad. I'm the animal mom, but I'm trying.
And not everybody has a green thumb. Some of us do better with animals than plants. That's definitely the case.
Yeah. That's why my husband and I make a good team. So tell us a little bit more about, about regenerative ranching. So you guys are both ranchers. How is it? I think I could tell you the basics of maybe how it's different from like a feedlot or something like that, but I'm sure there are great details that I am not privy to. Could you tell us more about that?
Yeah. So I think it's really, important to have kind of a working definition when we're talking about this. So regenerative ranching is farming and ranching in synchrony with nature and ecosystem processes to repair, rebuild, restore, and revitalize ecosystem functioning. So that starts with the soil and, everything underneath the soil and kind of moving into everything life above the soil as well. So what that looks like in practice can vary. We're talking about regenerative ranching or regenerative grazing versus like agriculture, cropping, that kind of thing, or ranchers. So we work with the animal side. And what that looks like on the ground is keep mimicking the natural grazing patterns of historic herbivores in this area. So like elk or deer or bison. Bison weren't really out here, but
Great Plains.
And how it differs from conventional ag or feedlots is a lot. So conventional, I guess I'll start with conventional ranching before the animals reach the feedlot, because we kind of have our beef system separated into a couple different parts. So what you'll see like on family ranches and a lot of the ranches with, out in the West with calves by their side, they're kind of maybe out on, a natural area on rangeland, but they're not in a feedlot. There are still many different grazing practices that occur in those areas that are not beneficial to soil. And what that kind of looks like is a rancher typically opening their gate and letting the cattle out into like a large swath of land for an extended period of time that varies depending on where you are. And the cattle each kind of like choose their favorite spots, and they kind of loaf there, they hang out there. They end up making bare spots on the ground. They end up grazing things before they're ready, before they've had enough time to regrow. And then kind of when the farmer rancher decides, they maybe move them on to like another section. And a regenerative system, like I said, we're mimicking natural herd behavior. So we aim to keep our cattle as one group that's bunched together and move them frequently to new areas. And typically that can be anywhere from 1 to 4 days, and let that area that they just grazed rest and recover for, however long the recovery time period is for that context. And what that does is it allows the above ground biomass to recover, but then as well as it's building soil over time. And we'll get into that a little bit more in detail. And so these two systems are typically like the beginning of the conventional system is kind of more the beginning of a cow's life, where they're born, and then those animals are weaned and sent to a feedlot where they spend the last several months of their life. They're not born on feedlots, and that's not how it works. It's, it's separated. And in a feedlot system, it's a confined animal feeding operation, or a CAFO. So they're kept in a lot together. They're kind of, knee deep in manure sometimes. There's lots of nutrient cycling issues, disease spread. They don't have a species appropriate diet. So they're fed a lot of corn and soy, or, grain that are very acidic. And so their rumen or their stomach is not set up to take that kind of feed, and so they're given subtherapeutic antibiotics and other medicines to prevent disease like acidosis, and they just don't have the freedom to express their natural behavior as cattle. So regenerative ranching aims to kind of tackle each of those issues.
Yeah. And we raise grass-fed, grass-finished beef, which means that our animals are always on pasture, and the diet that they eat to bring them to like the quality of meat that they would have, when they get butchered and sold, all happens on grass. So they never leave that like natural environment. They're never confined. They're never fed grain.
Yeah, we do the whole life cycle.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, feedlot stuff breaks my heart. And you can just smell it a mile away. Like even before I can't remember the names of all of the different throughways here, or what do we call them in California? Highways. And there's a huge, huge operation that's feedlot, and you can smell it far before it comes into view. And it's so upsetting. And I have to I can't look at it while I'm driving because it makes me sad, and I can't stop breathing. So there's nothing I can do about that. Versus, you drive by more of a pastured type of setup, which I'm sure in that area is not going to be regenerative, but still at least not feedlot. And you wouldn't even know they're there unless you glanced over and went, oh, cows. So, you can just smell disease, and you can smell when it's not healthy. And it's the same thing in healthcare. I can walk into a patient's room and go, I smell an infection. You just know when something is wrong. So
that smell too is like a lot of, so feedlots are the place in the conventional beef production system where a lot of the negative like climate impacts are localized. So there's like pollution because you're concentrating all those animals, and you get like runoff issues in big storms when all that manure, goes into the creek or goes out on land. But a lot of what you're smelling too is when that manure and urine is concentrated and not like distributed across an ecosystem that can absorb it and use it for fertility, those smells that you're smelling are like methane and nitrous oxide emissions. And that is like the heart of why folks think beef is so bad for the environment, where like in a regenerative system, in a natural ecosystem, the soil can absorb that urine and manure and the nitrogen that comes off of it and like use it for fertility, and given the right amount of rest can, increase the amount of vegetation that's produced there. Like you can increase the amount of grass you grow. And because of that cycle of like grazing and rest can promote enough vegetation that you like offset like the total emissions that the cow produces over their life. And I'm a firm believer that, it's biophysically possible that we have a carbon negative food system. We're a long way away from that now. Food and animal agriculture is like responsible for a decent amount of, total climate emissions, but like through like kind of the leading, what we call like the lighthouse farms and ranches, the places that show us the way, like we know that we can transform that system into something that's, carbon negative and a climate benefit as a whole.
Yeah. I was listening recently to a video, a short video by Dr. Connor Brady, and I love that man so much. He did like a mathematical equation in response to, I don't want to name names, but in response to some comments by some companies, specifically companies that own like Beyond Burger and things like that, talking about how cow farts are essentially like ruining our environment. And he like did this mathematical equation using the assumption of like the weight of a cow fart. It was ridiculous, but hilarious, but also like just pointing out how ridiculous it is that like we're going to blame that versus like all of the smog coming from the factories for these Beyond Burgers that they're making, and the money made, or the gasoline used to transport them, and the jet fuel, and the et cetera, right? So like it was really funny listening to him go into that, because I never thought that I would hear somebody do math about cow farts. But the truth is that as a species, we are perpetuating this cycle by cramming these poor animals who, even if you take the ethical part of the equation out, is the way we're treating them is what's causing the problem. But then that's not even the ethical problem; it's just the scientific problem. So, So is your guys' opinion that we would be able to move most or all ranching back to a more regenerative system and still be able to meet the demands of the amount of meat that we consume in this country?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. So the traditional story is that that's not possible. And the kind of the heart of the way that you have to start to push back on that narrative is that, one, the idea that, beef takes up too much land. It takes too many acres to produce the beef that we need. If we were to transition like all of meat production in the U.S. to a grass-based like regenerative model, we would need to start transitioning some of specifically like the cropland in the Midwest back to grass and like perennial forage species. So, diverse grasslands, like the prairies that were there before they were farmed.
Specifically that cropland that is used to grow animal feed for.
Yeah, because a huge percentage of like all of the like specifically corn and soy that's grown in the U.S. is grown for animal feed. And some of that is necessary, and we could do better producing like the feed rations for like chicken and pork that are like they have a digestive system that like that's appropriate for. But for beef production, we need to take those lands out of conventional farming, monocrop grain production, and put them back in grass. And there are some pretty easy and pretty well established like conversions about like the fertility of land and how many bushels of corn or how many bushels of soy that land will produce. And to convert that into grass is like how much grass can we produce on that acreage? And even using like conventional metrics, it's pretty easy to do the math that you can pencil out that we could convert the system, back into 100% grass fed. We just need to look at like the land base and not assume that the only land that we have available to grow beef on is the land that it's like currently grown on, because the production cycle now is so heavily reliant on importing all this grain. And then, we can get out of the emissions that are involved in that grain production and the fertilizer that we need to apply and the pesticide that is necessary to keep those monocrops going. And then there's just this whole cascade of beneficial environmental impacts when you've got more healthy soil through the Midwest, so that the Mississippi River watershed doesn't flood as regularly because it's not all tiled and drained because there's grass there. So it's not hard math to come to the conclusion that this is possible. We just need to think pretty deeply about how we incentivize different production systems in this country, like through USDA. And then, the other thing that I think is really important, and they talk about this a lot in agroecology, and I think we got to keep it in mind too in regenerative agriculture, is like these systems are knowledge intensive. Like it requires that the farmer and rancher has a deep understanding of soil health principles and of their climate and the cropping system that they're working with, or the animals that they work with, where the conventional system has kind of drained all that knowledge out of producers because, if you have a problem, somebody sells you a solution and you go and you spray it onto your field and that's all you got to know. And so, yeah, we got to, there's the incentives part, but there's also just like making an effort, the country and with incentives to help folks regain that knowledge and get back to a place where they can manage these systems effectively.
Incentive is, I think, an important word there, because I think a lot of the way things are stacked in this country is about money and profits. And, it just makes it really difficult to, I think, reel it back into the ground level, where with the actual people who are doing the work and raising the animals and seeing, the effects. And it's almost like, the power is not in their hands right now, and it should be. Unfortunately, some of these, even the food pyramid, which I won't go into, but it's things have not been tip top shape for a really long time. And I would love to see us really move toward improving things in this direction. And it's people like you who learn about it and continue to work at it and talk about it. So,
yeah. And farmers and ranchers, like, to a person, really want to be good stewards of the land and of the animals they care for. That's like, land in rural communities is like legacy, and folks want to know that they're leaving that in a better shape for the next generation than how they received it. And it's really like it's the incentives and kind of the system of like debt and the way we have operational finance for ranchers really like locks them in to conventional practices. So like if you are a crop producer, you're heavily reliant on crop insurance, and crop insurance, you can't get crop insurance if you start to make a transition away from conventional practices. So if you want to raise a different crop, or you want to change the amount that you apply fertilizer or some of these other things, it might disqualify you from this lifeline that farmers and ranchers need, because, relying on natural systems for production is inherently risky. Like, we have droughts and have floods, and it is a chaotic system, and even more so going forward with climate change. And so we've got to change that practice of crop insurance so that folks can keep that security and like move away from these detrimental practices. And, likewise with like debt, you can take an operating loan for the year, and if you don't meet that loan, that can be pretty disastrous. And like Zach Ducheneau from the previous administration was the FSA administrator. He was working on giving producers like long-term finance so that they can make more educated decisions that are less reactive to like making the payment next year in full. And so there's like a lot of little ways that we can tweak the system to like let farmers and ranchers do better because they want to.
I had no idea that crop insurance existed, but it makes sense. And that's really frustrating that that's a barrier. It's very unfair to hear that that's the case.
Yeah, it's the major way that that rural economies are structured, is like through these federal programs and how we produce.
My gosh. So aside from the agricultural implications of regenerative farming and ranching, let's talk about the nutritional benefits, the nutritional changes. What are the benefits to consumers for really kind of consuming these animals that have been raised by regenerative methods as opposed to perhaps a feedlot?
Yeah, there have been actually lots of studies on this kind of thing. And actually one recently just came out talking about the nutritional differences between grass-fed meat and the like kind of fake meat alternatives that you just mentioned. But if we're gonna, stick to beef, to feedlot versus grass-fed, there are numerous studies as well. Particularly, Stephen Van Vliet has done a really extensive study working with guys like Fred Provenza, and they have found that beef is higher in phytonutrients, vitamins, fatty acids, and lower in oxidative stress markers. So these, the ruminants' diet, the livestock, the cattle, their diet significantly affects their energy metabolism and glucose utilization. So phytonutrients, for example, which are basically naturally occurring compounds, are powerful antioxidants and anti-inflammatories, as lots of people listening probably know about. They're in fresh forages, like in a grass-fed system, they have found it to be 5 to 20 plus times higher in total phytonutrients. When given the opportunity, like in a grass-fed system or regenerative system, animals will eat dozens of different species per day. And what's really cool is they can actually detect nutritional deficiencies within their own bodies intuitively within hours or even minutes, and then kind of use nature as their pharmacy and like find the right plants that can kind of correct those deficiencies.
Yes, that's so cool. It's like zoo pharmacognosy, right? Where you have them, you like put options in front of an animal and you let them choose what they need.
Exactly.
That's so cool.
Yeah. And so
That's
ideally
so cool.
in like a regenerative system, you have that diversity of plants where you're giving them that option versus in a feedlot where they have this ration that's kind of predetermined and based off of, this, that, and the other kind of equation. And they're like, this is what they need. But as we know, there's lots of nuances within that can cause different health issues. So in a regenerative system where they have those options, grass-fed beef is shown to have a lot more of those nutrients in the protein and fat of the meat as well. The vitamins as well, vitamin E precursors, vitamin D, vitamin A have shown, they've shown it to be like 2 to 3 times, in some cases even more, 10 times more in grass-fed beef compared to grain-finished or feedlot beef. So yeah, that's one of the huge benefits as well, because we know that those are, again, antioxidants. They protect against cardiovascular disease and cancers and brain function decline and that kind of thing. And then the big one that we hear about a lot is omega-3s. Both the EPA and the DHA have shown to have, the DHA is 3 times more, EPA 10 times more, and then the conjugated linoleic acid can be up to 2 to 4 times more. So the total nutrients, these phytonutrients, the antioxidants, the key fatty acids and minerals and proteins and all that good stuff is shown to be a lot higher in grass-fed beef. And that just increases as a system, as you even move towards regenerative beef, kind of going beyond grass-fed a little bit to make sure that you're really getting that diversity in the soil and in those plants that's translating into those animals and their protein. But I guess I do want to point out on that point that like a lot of labels might claim to be grass-fed. And grass-fed actually doesn't preclude them from feeding grain. So you have to really look for the labels that say 100% grass-fed or grass-fed, grass-finished is another way people say it, because that grass-fed just alone can be a little bit misleading nowadays.
Yeah. Labeling is always tricky when you're parsing through everything in the grocery store. Yeah, I mean that the folks say that like it's eating grass-fed or like regenerative beef is more similar to eating like salmon than it is to eating like a McDonald's hamburger because of that ratio of like omega-6s to
the good fats and and you can actually see it in the meat as well. The fat tends to be a little bit more yellow, which actually is a really good sign. You want it to be more yellow. You see that in older animals a lot. That's all of those like phytonutrients and omega-3s really kind of concentrating in the fat there.
Yeah, and this science on like phytonutrients is new, and like I find it like super exciting because like we've identified like 800 or so like phytochemicals that transfer directly from like the different forages that the animals are out there eating. They eat those, they digest them, and then they show up in their meat and translate directly into the into you when you consume that meat. And like they found levels that are like, I'm not sure exactly which nutrients, but like some of these are like as high in grass-fed beef as they are in like kale or blueberries, some of those antioxidants. And I think there's just like a whole universe of these phytochemicals that we don't know to look for yet. And we don't know exactly what their benefits to human health are, but they're showing up and they're taken in by our animals and translating like directly to our own health. They're out there eating those 40, 50 species if they can find them in their diet. And each one of those, I'm sure, has like different beneficial compounds that we're picking up.
Yeah. I really like Michael Pollan, the journalist. He's like a food journalist and ag. He writes about food and ag a lot. He kind of moves beyond the "you are what you eat" statement, and he says you are what you eat eats too. And I always think about that, like, what did this animal eat? Because that is literally what makes up that food, that protein.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that
That's so
piece
cool.
about oxidative stress too is like
Yes.
we're seeing less markers of stress in our animals
Mm-hmm.
also as that like transfers over to our health because they're in a more healthy state, you
Yep.
know? And so it's like it's a continuum of like good begets good, and like it's better for animals, better for land, better for people.
Better for all of us.
Yeah, exactly.
That's so neat. Yeah. Phytonutrients so there's a lot of different kind of like models of feeding, right? There's the BARF model, there's PMR, there's ancestral, there's blah, 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 right? There's so many. But one thing that I have not seen people actually put in a model, like listed as one of the categories or components, is phytonutrients. And I have been trying to come up with, that was my dog whining. I have been trying to come up with kind of my own model. And I really want to have like a specific category where I mention phytonutrients because I think it's so important because unfortunately, a lot of people don't even have this knowledge of what we're talking about, right? They don't know. People, unless you look for it, you don't always know to ask the question.
Uh-huh.
And so if they're only able to find or source or afford or whatever the reason, kind of a more conventional feedlot beef, then you need to try and balance out those oxidative markers and stressors elsewhere. And by using organic fruits, veggies with these phytonutrients, herbs, that can kind of help offset that pro-inflammatory state to at least balance it out a little bit better. So I've been trying to incorporate a lot of that in my own meals and when I have clients and I recommend different foods and things for them. But I love the fact that you can just take an animal, raise it the way it's supposed to be raised as Mother Nature intended, and it does all of the work for you. So instead of having to put 20 herbs in this bowl to try and balance out your inflamed meat, you can just buy some uninflamed meat.
Yeah.
That's simplifying it, but I find it fascinating.
Yeah.
Takes a little bit of the stress out of the grocery store too when you're like, try that, you know.
But I like what you said about labeling. I was at Sprouts yesterday, and as per usual, I stand there forever in front of the fridge section looking at the packages in front of me. And it'll be like, oh, there's buy one, get one half off today. And I pick them up and I say, okay, this one just says grass-fed. This one says grass-fed, grass-finished. This one over here doesn't say anything about grass at all. And then you look at the price differences and, you know, it might vary by just a couple of dollars. Those couple of bucks can make the big difference for people. And they might put the thing down that says grass-fed, grass-finished, unfortunately. Yeah. But the impact to your health is so much more far-reaching than that couple of dollars for that 1 pound package. And I wish people kind of understood the long-term impact more because I wonder if it might change their decision when it comes down to a few dollars, you know, or a few dimes on the dollar.
I think absolutely it could. You know, unfortunately, so many people live paycheck to paycheck these days, and like it's so hard for these, you know, to afford these products. A lot of ranchers now, especially ones that do direct to consumer marketing, so they're selling their beef either like at the farmer's market or online and shipping it to your house. They're kind of foregoing those labels because they, you know, they have to, it's a lot of work to get some of these labels and it's another cost for the rancher. And they've found that their clients, their customers know them and know their practices enough where they don't even need that label. So you don't get that in the grocery store. Those labels can be helpful in a grocery store to decipher where your meat's coming from. But if you're buying direct from a rancher, they might not be certified organic. They might not be 100% grass-fed claimed on their label, but they're doing those things. And their clients and their customers know that. So that's kind of a good loophole to kind of keep costs down too for them.
It's definitely the best way to get meat is to go right to a rancher. You're also supporting that rancher in a much more direct way. Like direct to consumer meat sales is always like the profit center for a ranch that does that. Like that's where they get their biggest return. That kind of enables them to do good practices. And I'll give a shout out to getting a chest freezer if you got the space for it in your place and buying like a half or a quarter cow, because then you end up getting, you know, all of your grass-fed meat, like the filet mignon for like the same prices as like your ground beef, more or less. So that's always, you know, if you got the space, and not everybody does, but that's the way to do it, is to find a rancher that's like an actual person, buy directly from them. And, you know, those people, the folks who are doing that as part of their business model, they're always centering like the practices. If they see Regen Ag they're going to be, an open book either online or literally like their gate is open and you can go visit. So those are the good things to do.
What kind of questions should people ask if they are looking for a two-part question for you guys? One, how would you even find someone? Let's say you're just doing an online search. How would you find like a direct-to-consumer if you wanted to buy some beef or chickens or cows? And then two, what questions would you ask if you don't see those statements on the website, like, grass-fed, grass-finished, or organic, etc.? Like, how would you phrase those questions to find out?
So finding ranches or farms that sell meat direct to consumer is as simple as searching it on Google. There are lots of different websites now that have lists of regenerative ag practitioners, whether it's like, these bigger Regenerative America or, these bigger organizations, or smaller, like locally grown, it's called, websites that have these lists of producers. And it can be a little bit to wade through them depending on where you live. Some areas, they might be more sparse, but it is like grass-fed beef near me. And one of the things you really want to look for in their website are that they're saying that we are 100% grass-fed, no grain, because like I said, someone might claim grass-fed, and while it's true that that animal was grass-fed for the first 8-10 months of its life, maybe the last several months are usually grain finished. And so, and some producers, they use better grain than others as well. So if you can kind of parse out what these producers are doing from their websites.
Yeah, they're going to highlight it if they're doing it.
They're going to highlight
part of it.
Yeah, definitely. Questions you can ask them. I mean, I think if they're saying 100% grass-fed, that's great. Usually if they're doing regenerative practices, they'll say as much as well. So it should be all there.
Yeah, the only other thing I'd watch out for is like on Google, like a lot of the top sponsored results are going to be like aggregators. They're not actually ranchers, and some of them do like a pretty good job of trying to convince you that they're like an actual ranch and actual people.
Yeah,
and
they pay money, right? They pay money to Google so that
like
they're the top result.
And some are better than others. So some are like giving the ranchers like a good price, and they're just like doing the marketing for them and taking like a reasonable profit off that, but others are not, and they're aggregating product that's not as good. So like the best thing to do is when you do find a ranch, click through a little bit and like make sure that like the About Us section is like an actual person who raises animals, and not like, here are the places we source from, or some of them, because some of them might be really great and some of them might be less great when demand exceeds what they can really get, the supply that they can find. So and you're on top of knowing that you're getting a better product, you're also going to be supporting that rancher more directly.
Yeah.
So that's the thing to do.
So we did talk a little bit about price and profits. Have you found that it's significantly more expensive to raise animals regeneratively, or is it not having to use tons of antibiotics and, the other things that feedlot animals tend to encounter? Does that tend to offset the price? Like, is it comparable?
Yeah. So a lot of regenerative producers, like a way that we think about regenerative production is we're replacing inputs into the ranch or the farm with the ecosystem processes functioning better on the ranch. So we have clovers that fix nitrogen, so we're not buying in fertilizer. Our animals are rotated on pasture so that they're not exposed to as many parasites or diseases, and then we don't have to worm our animals. And that has a myriad of other benefits.
We're minimizing the hay input because we're having the animals literally harvest their own food.
Yeah, we're managing the grass better. So in a lot of ways, like the way that producers make money switching to regen practices is by lowering their input costs and becoming like the low-cost producer. There is a period of transition between conventional production and regenerative production that can be like difficult and like expensive and hard to navigate, because you are cutting yourself off basically from all these inputs because they're damaging the system, but the system isn't healed yet.
It's not ready.
It's not, it takes time to come back to like that flourishing state. So there's the people call it sometimes the years of pain, where it's like 2 or 3 years where it's like it can be kind of tough.
I mean, you could have more support for that transition.
Yeah, for sure.
There is a big lack of support.
That's another
financial.
In terms of like subsidy that conventional folks get, another thing that would be really beneficial is like figuring out ways to like help people make it through those couple of years and like give them either financing or like incentive payments to like switch to better production. People talk a lot also in folks in the conventional world who kind of want to like trash talk regen ag and regenerative production talk about the labor that it takes. And really like what folks who have been doing these transitions, like helping people transition, like Understanding Ag is a company that we've worked with in the past that does education and then does consulting with specific folks. And what they're finding basically is that like the total demand for labor changes dramatically between like what the farmer and rancher spends their time doing in a conventional system and what they do in a regenerative system, but it doesn't necessarily increase the amount of labor. So instead of being in the tractor, like tilling up the ground to plant a hay crop or spraying fertilizer or pesticide because you have like a weed outbreak, you're spending a lot more time like on the land, observing your animals, observing the livestock, how they're interacting with the forage that's available, and like walking the land or driving the land and like building temporary fence to like give them the appropriate amount of feed that they need for the next 2 or 3 days.
Yeah, we use a lot of temporary electric fence
it's
to
the
keep
big
the animals. Yeah, it's the main tool that we use to keep the animals in one bunch together and kind of in whatever space we've defined. And then we take it down each time they move.
Yeah, and like we have stock dogs, and on like bigger Western ranches, you might be doing that more like with dogs and on horseback and practicing like how you take the animals to a place and settle them so that they like know, okay, we're going to be like in this valley for a couple days or like, in this area for a while. But
that's a whole nother world.
That's a whole other world. We've got a little bit of both. We like electric fence, but so there's this labor component, and it changes, doesn't necessarily go up. But I mean, really the reason that grass-fed beef is just that little bit more expensive in the store is because we don't produce enough of it. A lot of the grass-fed beef on store shelves is imported, and I'd caution folks to try to buy grass-fed beef that was grown in the United States. Labeling can be tricky on that front. Like
if it's packaged here, they can say product of the USA, even though it was raised in New Zealand, for example.
And well, some of that stuff's really good. Like the product itself can be good, and they have found like when stuff gets aggregated overseas, people can like switch, kind of fill the gaps sometimes with like grain-fed beef. So you don't always know that you're getting what they say you're getting. So buying American with your beef is always good. But that's really where the price difference is. I think between the subsidization of grain, which helps lower the cost of grain-fed beef, and just the fact that a grass-fed beef, grass-finished beef is like a growing sector, growing really quickly year over year. That just keeps that price that little bit higher. But if we were to, make the transition in an intentional way and have that sector of the economy expand, I think that price would come down, and it'd still be hugely beneficial for the producers, because even if the price was more comparable to conventional beef, we're doing all this work to be the low-cost producer. So like ranchers are making their money and reducing their costs, not necessarily like increasing the price of their product.
See, I knew this was going to be an insightful conversation. So what we need to do then is just encourage everybody to switch to regenerative ranching, and then everybody would be able to afford it.
You fully
if only it was simple as clicking the button.
I mean, they've also shown just for the ranchers and farmers themselves, their quality of life just drastically improves when, they're working with nature and within an ecosystem and seeing how it thrives over time, especially
like everyday forest bathing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Just they're happier and they have less stress. For ranchers, like all the debt they accrue can be a huge burden on them, and it's increased cases of farmer suicide even. And so transitioning to these systems that bring life can be actually life-giving to the ranchers themselves as well.
Yeah, and just like also the physical realities of being exposed to all these petrochemicals all the time in conventional production.
Benefits go on.
Yeah. You're not in the tractor so that you don't lose your hearing in old age quite as readily as a lot of ranchers I know in the conventional world do. And so there's a lot of benefits. And also, I'm glad we got the opportunity to say it, but like the more thriving regenerative ranches we have in a community, like the more that the health of that community is going to be benefited economically, because, that rancher is keeping a higher percentage of like the total profits in the whole production chain, from like a cow having a calf all the way to meat, a higher percentage of the profit is going to be on that ranch. And if you get like a network of ranches that are doing better in that way and able to like retain more money, they're going to invest in services that they need in the community. There's going to be someone who can supply them with, they're going to have more jobs. Yeah, more jobs, the co-op's going to be more thriving because they're going to need to get like their seed and their equipment worked on. There's going to be a guy who's a fence contractor to help them build fence when they're doing other things. And a lot of the way that our rural communities have been kind of like drained of vitality is that just like more and more of the profit leaves that community because there are fewer and fewer like profit centers, and the ranches and farms are getting bigger and bigger. And so the things they need from the community just kind of decreases over time. And so if we have more of these like thriving small and medium-sized businesses, we might have a chance at like having rural communities that like are attractive to young people to like stay and live there and like build families and communities.
I love that so much. Healthier soil, healthier cows, healthier community, healthier ranchers. Just overall improves every aspect.
We absolutely
That's
can't
amazing.
forget the human component of it all.
Yeah. Oh, gosh. So I would love for you guys to tell us about your dog food line that you recently created.
Yeah. So we started a dog food company. It's called Solfed Ranch. We haven't quite launched yet, but we have one product so far. It's going to be a grass-fed beef based.
We have a website and an Instagram.
Yeah, we do.
Awesome. I will link those in the show notes, but could you tell us what they are?
Yeah, sure. It's Soul Fed, which is SOL Fed Dog Food.com, or at Soulfed Dog Food for the Instagram handle. What kind of inspired us to start a dog food line after working with human food or grass-fed beef for humans for so long was just working alongside all of the many like herding dogs and livestock guardian dogs that have been a part of our team over the years.
Have 3 border collies.
We do.
Dogs. Both our ranches have livestock guardian dogs.
Many livestock guardian dogs and other herding dogs. And, these are our coworkers and our companions. And so,
I love that so much because my dogs are mutts, and one of them is half Catahoula leopard and the other one is half Great Pyrenees. And so I'm very obsessed with like livestock guardian and working dogs, and Lord knows that mine are not smart enough to go do any work, but I still love and respect the breed.
Yeah. And it's pretty incredible what, they can do when you get ones that are, really have the instinct. They have a job and they want to do that job. So, we've always been talking about the different health benefits of grass-fed beef, which is, the star ingredient of our recipe. So we wanted to give kind of this amazing product to these animals that help us every single day as well. So yeah, that's kind of what inspired us. And then we also saw kind of the frozen.
Yeah, we saw that frozen food aisle at all the pet food stores just kind of kept expanding over time. And I mean, really, like, I think the idea came from just like flipping over those frozen options and just seeing like how many low quality ingredients and how much filler is in a lot of that food. It's like, I looked at the back and I'm like, wow, this is not a good product for the price point that people are paying. And like, folks who are buying that food like really want to do right by their animals and really take care of their dogs, and it's a lot of filler. And so our product is 84%
animal
protein. It's got a lot of organ meats in it. It's very organ forward.
I just want to say, it was formulated by a certain
absolutely
canine nutritionist who we get to speak with today.
Hey, that's me. Yes, I did help formulate this. So, so I mean, we have our 100% grass-fed, grass-finished beef, right? Some organs, excellent produce. Couple of superfoods in there, right? The mushrooms and so I think that
and dandelion greens and blueberries and
yep, all those phytonutrients in there. So
exactly.
Yeah, I'm really excited for you guys. Stuff.
Yeah, we're really excited and happy about the recipe, and we've gotten really good feedback. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I'm excited to see it. And I'm just excited to see more local, I mean,
Hmm.
I think there are some companies that have popped up out of California and you see them kind of like in a local bubble, but there's not too many. And it's just, like you were saying about your local ranching and your local farming, it's just very impactful overall for the community. And I just really love that. So.
Yeah, and that's really like the kind of third leg of why we were motivated to start the dog food company is like organ meat in particular. Like most Americans don't consume a ton of organ meat, and so it's like a really difficult thing for a lot of small ranchers to move, even if they're doing direct to consumer sales. And
they want to use the whole animal. Like we have these great nutrient dense organs, and it's like, oh man, we don't want to throw those away.
Yeah, so part of the idea of the company is that we're providing like an outlet for a product that's hard for ranchers to move, so that they've got like a more consistent avenue to market those products and support
less
ranchers
waste.
doing good work. So yeah, we're sourcing all from basically ranchers we know, people who are doing good by the land and practicing regenerative agriculture. So we're really close to the production side. That's where we come from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. So if people now, are you actually selling yet, or is it still in production?
People are signing up for our wait list right now, and you can do
Awesome.
that through our website to be notified, be the first to be notified when we actually have product, which we expect to be the next 2 months, 3 months.
Next couple months. Yeah, we're going through like the last steps of getting our label approved and stuff like that. But we're
To sign up and put myself on the wait list. I'm so excited.
Yeah, you can just visit our website, and that's the best way to find
it. Dude, yeah, for you, it'll be a great way to take the pressure off. One of those fantastic meals that you make for your dogs if you're busy.
Yeah.
my poor husband. So I just did another month of meal prep, but I bought 3 months worth of food, and there was so much that it filled my chest freezer is next to me. It filled it literally to the top, and then I have a stand-up freezer in the garage, and it was completely stacked. And then the freezer above our refrigerator was likewise full to bursting. And then by the time I was done prepping, I still had to put 3 or 4 days worth more than I normally do in the fridge because there was no space for it. So my husband is just like, how long are we going to be doing this? So I'm very excited to give it a try. But
Good. Yeah, well, happy to help him out,
Oh my gosh. All right. Well, this was amazing. I feel like I learned so much. We're going to have to put in some links in the show notes and, I'll make sure that everybody knows how to contact you. Definitely get on the wait list for the food. And I'll see if I can even find some links to some studies because you mentioned a couple.
Yeah, I have some pretty good links.
Yeah.
Any nutritional studies.
Yes.
Yeah.
Please share. Yes, absolutely. I love reading studies, and maybe 1 or 2 people listening do as well. So this was amazing.
Just read the abstract.
Thank you guys so much.
Yes.
What was that?
Just read the abstract.
Just read the abstract. Oh, God, you don't want to get me started on that. I had a whole conversation about abstract reading the other day. Guys, don't just read the abstract.
Yeah. There's nuance.
Oh. All right, you two. I'm going to let you go. This has been amazing. I think that there is infinitely more that we could learn, but this at least gives people a starting point. And I know that I will definitely be looking for some local companies that I can source from, just in terms of feeding myself and my husband on a day-to-day basis. So thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. This was so great. Super fun.
All right, we'll talk to you soon.
All right.
Bye.
Thank you for listening. Please remember that you, yes, you, are the driving force that helps keep small businesses and platforms like mine running. So if you liked what you heard, please like, share, and most importantly, rate this podcast. It's the only way we can reach more people and spread the word about natural health. None of the conditions discussed or recommendations given are meant to replace the advice of your health provider. So if you have concerns about yourself or your pets, please confer with a human or animal health practitioner. Have a super fantastic day, and I'll see you next week.